Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our third annual Digital Empowers Summit. For those of you who weren't here yesterday, I'm Mark DeCourcy, the Senior Vice President of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and I lead the Chamber's Corporate Citizenship Center. I'm joined by our partner, Balaji Ganapathy. Balaji?
Hi, I'm Balaji Ganapathy. I'm the Chief Social Responsibility Officer for TCS. And welcome to day 2 of Digital Empowers.
Thank you, Balaji. Everyone, when the Chamber Foundation and TCS Digital Empowers partnership began, we sought to create a platform for the social innovation community to come together, exchange ideas and exchange best practices, and basically learn from one another as we all drive meaningful change in every aspect of society. And along the way, we've met some amazing individuals and incredible organizations that are doing things to change the world through the power of partnerships.
That's right, Mark. We are very excited to bring you day 2 of the summit. Day 1 was a fabulous day. And for those of you who were not able to participate, you can go back and look at the panels, the wealth of knowledge, the relevance of topics, and the level of engagement was really high. Today, the purpose of Digital Empowers is stronger than ever before. And we are starting by recognizing innovative partnerships that are delivering real change. We're going to honor 6 exemplary organizations and partnerships for their achievements in accelerating impact for business and social good. And the 6 categories are connected society, the future of work, industry frontiers, social and cultural impact, and tech for good in emerging economies. These organizations that we are recognizing are all unique, but they are similar in that all of them are leveraging the power of technology in a transformative way to create a tangible impact on society. So Mark, would you like to introduce the first category and the recognition?
You bet I would. So we're thrilled, everyone, to recognize our first honoree, Amazon Community Flex Deliveries. They are being recognized in the Connected Society category. So through Amazon Flex Network, Amazon and its partners have donated delivery services to bring millions of meals to those in need in over 25 cities across our country to support hunger relief efforts during this pandemic. In a few minutes, we're going to hear from Amazon's Bettina Sticks and Bread for the City's George Jones on this incredible effort. I got to tell you, whenever there's been a humanitarian crisis and the Chamber Foundation has reached out to Amazon, we reach out to Bettina, and she's always been there for us. Next up, and so the second category is Tech for Good in emerging economies.
Yes, we're excited to recognize digital acceleration for the transformation of Africa, or DATA. This organization, and you're going to be really excited to hear what they have to say. They are creating better health outcomes in West Africa by creating a pipeline for US technology entrepreneurs to transform healthcare in Africa, using the power of machine learning and AI. You'll be hearing in a few minutes from John Paul and William Senyo of Impact Hub New York metropolitan area on this great program. We all know we need the power of entrepreneurships and social entrepreneurships, especially in integrating technology for social change. Over to you, Mark.
Yeah, no, thanks for being here, JP and William. It's now my pleasure to present the recognition for the social and cultural impact category. We're honored to recognize Raising Good Gamers, the initiative brought together by Games for Change and Connected Learning Lab. They catalyze positive change in the culture and climate of online video gaming for our nation's youth. Game for Change's Susan Pollock and Nickelodeon's Makeda Mays Green will also join us to tell you more about this incredible partnership.
Thank you, Mark. Next up, we have the Industry Frontiers category. And it is my absolute pleasure to recognize Stanley Black & Decker plus Techstar's Accelerator. Stanley Black & Decker has been a global leader in sustainability, and they have partnered with Techstar to create and run an accelerator focused on AI in advanced manufacturing. This is a story you need to hear. And we have Marty Gui of Stanley, Black & Decker, and he will be joined by one of their participating companies, Scott Porter of Dynamic Green Products, to discuss their partnership.
And our final category is the future of work. For this category, we're recognizing two organizations that have made significant investments in preparing people for future jobs. Joining us is Empath founder and CEO, former U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Carlos Gutierrez. Also then, we will be finding more about Empath's efforts. And to close, we'll then follow up with Digital Empower's Director, Alexa Miller, who will recognize Dr. Tomas Chamorro Premuzic, Manpower Group's Chief Talent Scientist. He'll close out the 2020 Summit Plenary Program by sharing his thoughts on how individuals and organizations can develop winning strategies to overcome future challenges in the workforce and in leadership. Now, to take us deeper into these partnerships and how they got there and what's next, please welcome our session moderator, the one and only Carol Cohn. Carol, over to you.
Thank you, Mark, the one and only. I appreciate that. This is such an exciting conference, and I'd like to give great kudos to you, Mark, and to Balaji from TCS, because you're constantly showcasing real innovation and how partnerships come together for innovation and for scale. So, kudos to you. Let's just get started. We're going to go through each one of the recipients that have been showcased. Each one's going to go about 5 minutes about who they are. And then we're going to get into a lively question and answer session. Certainly, if you are listening, you can add a question. But also, I've got a few questions because I've been working on partnerships for about 30 years. So let's just start with Bettina and George from Community Delivery. So Bettina, can you take it away?
You can advance to slide number 2 and 3. So I'm very honored to be here. We appreciate all the efforts from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and as Mark pointed out, we're trying to be the best partners we can, especially when natural disasters hit. But today, I'm actually focusing a little bit on a program that we have started in the pandemic. It's called Community Flex Deliveries. You can advance, to this slide. At Amazon, we're committed to helping the communities where our employees live and work, and we're particularly focused on supporting families with children in need, especially those that are underrepresented. We want them to have the best future that they deserve, and a big part of this is to make sure that families have food. We also believe that leveraging what Amazon is best at and known and trusted for is worth offering to our communities, such as our logistics. So when the pandemic hit and countries and states issued stay-home orders, we realized that we may have a tool to help. You can go on to the next slide. We've all seen the pictures of those long lines. This one is, I think, the San Antonio Food Bank in Texas. And when businesses were shut down due to the pandemic, we all also know that 30 million Americans were suddenly out of work and struggled to get by just without their regular incomes. At the same time, food banks and food pantries struggled to serve their clients because pick up food in congregate settings became difficult. So our partners around the country started having pickup locations, drive-throughs in order to get to their clients. So we wondered, is this something that we can offer? Can we not deliver the food directly to the clients? And this is the next slide. So we went to work. Engineers and operation managers of our last mile fleet spun up a basic program that was built on top of our services that we usually use to deliver groceries and packages to Amazon customers. If you are an Amazon customer, you may have heard, and you live in city that has those programs, you may have ordered from Prime Now or Prime Fresh yourself. Especially in the pandemic, it was a good way to get your groceries within a short period of time. Somebody shows up at your doorstep with a bag of groceries that was picked and assembled either at an Amazon facility or at Whole Foods, for example. What we did in the case of Community Flex Deliveries is those groceries were actually assembled at the food banks and the food agencies, and then our drivers came, picked it up, and delivered it to the addresses of their clients. Next slide, please. In the previous picture, you saw one of our flex drivers, but in some instances, we also use big vans like this one, or sometimes also you may know this also a treasure truck, which is actually a fun truck that we use in certain cities to kind of surprise with discounts, and we put them also to use. Next slide, please. We have delivered more than 8 million meals straight to the doorsteps of seniors, families, and children in need since we partnered with our food bank and agency partners. And next slide, please. And not only did we deliver those meals in the U.S. in 25 cities, but also in a few locations globally in Melbourne, Tokyo, Singapore, Madrid, Valencia, and London. In the UK, additionally, we also teamed up with a nonprofit called Magic Breakfast. Magic Breakfast helps children deliver school meals to children that are of risk of hunger. And in COVID-19, with those restrictions, we deliver those breakfasts directly to the children. Amazon has also, next slide, please. Amazon has also piloted hundreds of thousands of meals with Portland Public Schools, Seattle Public Schools, and we delivered meals and devices for the Los Angeles Unified School District. And as you can see in this picture, we adapted all kinds of delivery bags, like whatever our food agency provided, paper bags, plastic bags, big boxes for an entire month for senior citizens. And our drivers did the best to kind of accommodate them in their cars and really pack it up and make sure that those clients received their food timely. Next slide. And so one of our first partners was actually Bread for the City in Anacostia, DC. Bread for the City has already been receiving regular donations from us for shelf-stable food, for hygiene items, clothes, and we had ongoing partnership discussions, and we discussed the need for Bread for the City long before the pandemic to deliver clients at home. So when the pandemic hit and we reached out to Bread for the City to ask them if this was a service that they would like to make use of. And we'll show in a quick video before I hand it over to my friend George Jones from Bread for the City.
Bread for the City has been around for almost 46 years here in Washington, D.C. When the pandemic hit, food was still the first thing that became critical for folks. Everybody was hunkering down. It was this challenge of how are people going to make sure that they can eat and their children can eat. There was this natural opportunity. Amazon, with this expertise around delivery and our need to then get food to people in the safest way possible.
We got 20, y'all.
It was critical for them to get involved quickly. By the end of March or the beginning of April, Amazon had already created a system where they could start delivering groceries for us. We're reaching more people than ever.
You want to put some in the back seat? We try to make it easy as possible for them to get them their bag before they can get out real quick.
I always sign up when I can see it, if I'm available. I feel like you're actually doing something for the community, and the community needs everything they can get right now.
All right, guys, I'm off to my day.
Means for our community. So we're really grateful for Amazon sort of helping us both stand up this new model of service and helping us really see into the future of what it could be.
So, this is
yes. I want to just manage our time. So We're going to give you about a minute, but you're going to get more time later. What's the best thing about your relationship with Amazon?
Well, that's the easy answer is we really were reaching anywhere from 50% to 100% more people every day than we were before the pandemic. So it's one of those odd things where suddenly things got a little better during one of the worst times in our recent memory.
Okay, one other thing, and then we're going to have to go to our next, but we'll get you in the letterhead.
Sure. I think the other thing is that we have created this relationship with this new community group, Amazon coming to the DC and the metro area. And we were excited to be among one of the first groups that they established a real meaningful substantive relationship with.
Well, super. Okay, so both you and Bettina have about almost 25 years of service for your companies and organizations. And so you've got a lot of learnings. We're going to get into those in a bit later. So thank you very much. It's an amazing, amazing action and effort. Let's now go to our next organization, Tech for Good and Emerging Economies, and John Paul and your partner, William. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to be here. And it's such an honor and privilege to be able to talk about this topic today, which is a very meaningful topic for William and I, which is a partnership between Impact Hub New York Metropolitan Area and Impact Hub Accra, which is basically designed to lift impactful entrepreneurs on both sides of the Atlantic. And given the number of opportunities that there are today to use new technologies and to leverage existing technologies to provide opportunities for entrepreneurs, both who are in underserved communities in the US, as well as emerging entrepreneurs that are coming out of places like Ghana. It's just very exciting to be able to build some very interesting and new value on top of the infrastructure that's available. So I'm here representing Impact Hub New York Metropolitan Area and joined by William, who's representing Impact Hub Accra. And Impact Hub is a global association of entrepreneurial communities that are in more than 100 cities and 55 countries. These are locally rooted organizations. We support entrepreneurs and change makers through events, through programs, and during non-COVID times, spaces designed to help impactful ideas succeed, all in alignment with the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, which I'm sure many of the people in the audience have heard of and are very passionate about. So our partnership began basically in 2012. So this is a long-term partnership. When I actually met William in New York at an event on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And we had a chance to get to know each other a little bit more. We had a chance to talk about some of the issues that were facing both New Yorkers and people in Ghana. And after being in touch and having had an opportunity to also work with a whole group of shared friends and who also had a vision to make a very strong impact, we ended up working to co-found the hub in Accra, Ghana, and had worked to build that hub over the course of many years. And I mention that because I think one of the lessons that's very important for partnerships in general is that there was a spirit that we shared of collaboration and a spirit of learning, a spirit of diving in and taking a plunge, to take a risk, to do something bold and do something meaningful together that has informed the path of this partnership for many years, that had evolved from us starting a hub in Accra to now me going back and working on a hub in New York and including and working diligently with William and the Impact Hub Accra team to continue to build a connection between communities here that also need support and Accra. And so it's very meaningful, I think, for both of us to be able to, over time, not just for the glory of putting together a program, but of really being dedicated over time to each other's communities to really make a long-lasting difference. And as many people know, it takes a really long time to understand how to do that, how to be effective. And that's something that we want, long-term engagement. So I'm actually going to hand it over to William to talk a little bit about what this partnership can mean and how it can really empower people in Ghana.
Thank you, JP, for setting that up. And taking it from there, what I will stress is that for global communities to develop a shared vision, there has to be a certain level of unlikely players at the table. And for people, young entrepreneurs and innovators emerging in parts of Africa, it can sometimes feel like a lonely world when you can see a lot of global movement on big goals, but very little engagement connecting back to the continent. So partnerships like this that cross the Atlantic and lift people up from this side to engage on the same level has two values. Access to capital, and a lot of what is entrepreneurship when there's no capital to actually drive ideas. So if you live, you're a young entrepreneur in Accra, Ghana, West African nation, small GDP, ambitious nation, but limited in resources, you're having to try to scrape around a local economy to raise small capital to push bold ideas. And the goal of some of these partnerships is to connect local entrepreneurs to global resources that exist in centers like the US, where there's an abundance of capital. So a big part of the relationship is around connecting to capital. The second part of the relationship is connected to knowledge. So the curve for innovation, because of the limitations of R&D, can be really long for early stage entrepreneurs in parts of Ghana and West Africa. So how do you accelerate ideas to product and to market? And part of this relationship is also that, creating relationships where talent can move from New York into Accra to accelerate progress. So it's part of this whole global issue of misalignment of talent. There's an excess of talent sitting in parts of the world with fewer problems to fix, and then an excess of problems sitting in parts of the world with fewer talent to fix it. And this relationship creates that symbiotic relationship where we can connect those two. And we've run that through multiple programs and events in both countries that brings people together for collaboration.
Perfect. William, I don't mean to cut you off, but that was a great start. We want to move to our next, but we're going to get back to you in the second half of the program. So excellent. Okay, for our next duo in arts and culture, Raising Good Gamers Initiative, we'd like to bring up Susanna and Makeda.
Okay, hello. Okay, terrific. So thank you very much for that introduction. I'm Susanna Pollack, and I'm president of Games for Change. We are a not-for-profit that works in the intersection of interactive technology and impact with a focus on video games and immersive media. I'm joined by a good friend, Makeda Mays-Green, who's from Nickelodeon, and I'm going to throw it to her in a few minutes to talk about her involvement in this project. But first, I'll just give you an overview of what we're doing and why. So in early 2020, right before the pandemic, Games for Change established a partnership with the Connected Learning Lab at University of Irvine to draw attention to the need of creating safe online spaces for young people, in particularly in a gaming culture. There's a lot of just general understanding about rules that young kids play on a physical playground, but we identified the fact that there aren't existing commonplace rules and policies and systems in place to ensure safe online spaces for young people online, right? They're the online playgrounds, which culture now is showing is very much in a gaming environment. So we established a cross-sector series of partnerships around this issue called Raising Good Gamers in order to address this in a systematic way. But before we go more deeply into how these partnerships folded, I just want to show you a little bit about why this is relevant. So we can go to the next slide. The statistics have shown that there are more than 214 million people in the United States alone who plays video games. Video games are ubiquitous within our culture. And as we've seen within the pandemic in particular, online games can be a place that bring people together. right? It's actually one of the most positive things that have come out of, or the way positive ways that video games are in our lives is it's a place where people can connect with one another. And 75% of online games report that they're actually making friends and they're keeping in touch with their friends online. And 70% of those people meeting friends, playing with friends are under the age of 18. Now, our initiative is research-based, and it's very important to us as we put together recommendations on how we can improve a more pro-social culture online. We brought in partners like Makeda Mays-Green at Nickelodeon, who spends her life researching patterns of young people. So I'm going to let Makeda talk a little bit more about what she's learned about young people's behavior. Next slide.
Thank you, Susanna. So we conduct research on a regular cadence to understand the attitudes, behaviors, and lifestyles of kids. And what our research continues to show, particularly our research across digital platforms, when we look at penetration, usage, and activity, is that gaming continues to be among the top activities on mobile devices. We also know that video game related content is among the top 5 categories viewed by kids on YouTube, everything from video game playthroughs to reviews. On the social engagement side, we know that social multiplayer games contain an element of this fear of missing out. It's painful for kids to miss. They want to be a part of the action, and it's also frustrating for them to leave the party once they're engaged with their friends and peers. Social influencers have become household names, and as with video content, kids are putting their own spin on the definition of what is age appropriate. That being said, when we look at the next slide, we know that through this engagement, kids encounter elements of toxicity. Particularly among 8 to 14-year-olds, kids express concern about bullying and inappropriate language. The quotes here are illustrative of their concerns around everything from bad words to bullying, mean behavior, as well as profanity.
Thank you so much, Makeda. We can go to the next slide, please. So the vision and opportunity that we see within Raising Good Gamers is to catalyze positive change in the culture and climate of online gaming for youth. And we've developed an integrated framework that incentivizes pro-social game behavior as opposed to acknowledging the negative kind of connotations that social influencers or even game players have within that environment. We can mitigate the systemic bias, hate, and harassment that have marginalized youth and people at large are experienced within game communities, and leveraging peer moderation, mentorship, as well as diversifying participation. And we very much want to focus on elevating minority voices. Next slide, please. Our approach is really four areas of attention. One is cross-sector, and this speaks to the partnership opportunities. So we are focusing on a very wide cross-sector reach of people who are working in the games industry as developers or publishers, but we're also looking outside of those groups into advocacy groups, educators, parents, youth, researchers. There's a slide in a minute which I'll show, which shows the ecosystem to that. We're also youth-driven, research-led, and asset-based. Let young people have the voice in this process. If you go to the next slide, next one after that, please. The ecosystem framework. So this is something I just want to bring to your attention of how we look at partnerships. It's not just about brand partnerships or media partnerships. We want to develop partnerships with parents and families, with educators, with influencers and streamers that Makeda talked about. And then there's another concentric circle outside of that are the industry partners and the policymakers, as well as researchers and funders, of course, and advocates and activists. If you go to the next slide.
So Susanna, here's what we're going to do, because we've got to go to our next team.
Okay.
Those are a lot of partners, but
I know. Yeah, we'll get there.
We're going to get there because we really want to know how to do that. So thank you so much. That was fantastic. Let's go next to Industry Frontiers with Marty and Scott, and it's from Stanley, and also their Techstars Accelerator. So Marty, take it away.
Thank you, Carol. And Marty Guay with Stanley Black & Decker, a 177-year-old organization that is really accelerating fast into the future. It's fun to follow the gamers. We are actually for the makers. We are for those who make the world. And we are an industrial business, an infrastructure business. We have a security business, but you recognize us through our tools. We're the largest tool maker in the world. We're really proud of that. And by proxy, our tools build the world. So we're very proud of that. We have 3 strategic imperatives. One is around performance. The second around is being world-class in innovation. And the third is around our CSR and sustainability strategies. And those are manifested in our D&I strategies, our carbon neutral to carbon positive strategies, our packaging to go green. But we're also looking to improve the lives of 500 million people over the next 10 years and build 10 million makers over the next 10 years. Innovation is fundamental for us. 99.99% of all the innovation in the world takes place outside of Stanley Black & Decker. So we partner with the world's great ecosystems, and Techstars is one of those. Today, we're going to showcase what we've done with dynamic green products around sustainability. And a friend and a colleague of ours, Scott Porter, through bio-based cleaning, bio-based lubricant oils, and products, and we're really proud of it. We partner with companies and specifically startups because we want to accelerate our strategies, because we want to find adjacencies, we want to really understand the world. So we go outside to really help our customers, and we're proud of that. Scott, I'm going to let you take it away and do what you do best, is what talk about a great American startup.
Thank you, Marty, and thank you, Carol. I appreciate it. And as Marty mentioned, we were brought into the Techstar Stanley ecosystem last year in 2019. So we were a small startup. We're still small, but we were brought in on the premise of sustainability and advancement of bio-based lubricants and cleaners. And for those folks that don't know, bio-based basically means substantially or wholly plant-derived in the product. Doesn't necessarily mean organic, but the focus is removing away from petroleum and going to a more renewable feedstock. So when Stanley brought us in, I mean, not only are we tremendously privileged and grateful to be tied to such an iconic brand and company, but the fact that you have a global leader in hardline tools that is interested in fluids, because ultimately these fluids get out into the environment. They're exposed from an inhalation, a dermal, an ingestion perspective. You know, it was really amazing to be brought into that ecosystem. And for a small company like us, partnership is critical because we get to leverage the know-how and the experience of the folks at Stanley Black & Decker. And Marty mentioned 177 years. We're 5 years into this, so we've got a lot of catching up to do. But, you know, reaching out and having the partnership with guys and gals like Marty that have 30 plus years of not only know-how, but the manufacturing experience, the intellectual property, you know, everything that they bring to the table is amazing for a small company. And how that relates to COVID, we were not in the hard line, we were not in the PPE, but Stanley said, hey, we have essential workers, we need help, you make fluids, can you build a hand sanitizer? So we went out there and we sourced the cleanest alcohol available. We built a product from the ground floor up with a very simple mandate from Stanley. It was, we want safety, safety, and safety. And that was the directive. And of course, we still used our bio-based material. So alcohol is bio-based, but we use a bio-based plant thickener. We made sure that our fragrances were essential oils. So we did everything possible to maintain our standards, but really help Stanley build a safe product and then leverage their partnership to bring that to the world. So today we're actually bringing hand sanitizer under various Stanley brands, Stanley, Black & Decker, Craftsman, and their Stanley Earth brand at Home Depot, Lowe's, and other entities. So it's very exciting, but it's all enabled by partnership and the fact that big companies are willing to support innovative small companies and help produce that at scale to consumers around the world. So it's very exciting, and it's a privilege to be part of the Stanley team.
Super. So thank you, Scott and Marty. We're running a little bit long, so I want to turn it over to our last wonderful idea. It's called The Future of Work, and it's called Empath is the organization. And Carlos Gutierrez, who you may know and recall as U.S. Secretary of Commerce, also a phenomenal CEO of Kellogg. So Carlos, if you could share what is Empath and what is the future of work?
we do skills inferencing. We use machine learning, and we go into a company's data room or systems of record, whatever they have, and then we infer using hundreds of thousands of signals on an employee, we infer their skills. And then we compare that to the skills required to do any given job, and then we recommend the coursework so that that employee can fill their targeted job. There are two big trends that really make us passionate about this. One is we know that the fourth industrial revolution has been accelerated by COVID. There are a lot of people who are going to be displaced by technology, and they're going to need reskilling, they're going to need upskilling. The interesting thing is that as I talk to people, and I'll say, what skills do you have? They'll say, I don't know. We're not used to thinking in terms of skills. The second thing that we've seen happening in the corporate world is there's been this trend of using skills and diplomas as the key currency and not just diplomas. And that is a trend that's been happening for quite a while, but the tools haven't been available. And what we do is we bring the tools to the corporate world. We do it in a way that's non-biased. So we don't infer resumes. We don't infer LinkedIn. In a resume, you look at a resume and some people look at keywords, but invariably you can tell the color of a person, where they were born, female or male, and that could create biases. No biases, it's just about skills. We also empower employees. They know what their skills are. They know how they can get to the future targeted job. And employees today want that kind of direction. What am I good at? What do I need? Give me some coaching. And then finally, we make managers better managers. The conversation goes from anecdotal subjectivity, performance reviews and coaching sessions. The conversation changes to skills. What are your skills? How can we help you improve your skills? And how can we help you get to where you want to go?
Terrific. And you were very succinct, and we appreciate that. So I now like to turn us to the conversation. And so since these are such incredible and diverse dynamic partnerships, I want to go right to cut to the chase. What are the one or two secrets to making your partnerships extraordinary? Okay, so let's just start with Bettina and George. What's the special sauce that makes your partnership really work well?
This is George. I would say that you have to center the people you're trying to serve at all of your solutions. You have to be thinking about what your community wants, what the end user, to use a corporate term. And that's what we always try to do at Breadth of the City is what is best for what would our community want when we're trying to offer them support and service.
And how do you make sure that Amazon understands that? Because Amazon, they're going fast, they're going forward, they're about logistics. How do you get that to be understood?
Yeah, we've had a really open, honest, transparent relationship. Amazon, to its credit, has always asked us what's working and what's not working. That's been really important. And we've been willing to say, here's the things that are working and here are the things we need to improve on. And again, at the center of it is always what is going to be best for the people we're trying to serve.
Excellent. Okay, let's move on to, how about John Paul and William? What's the secret to your success of your relationship?
I think for me, if I can speak for Impact Hub in this partnership, it's mutual shared value, which is this idea that there's something for either parties and that they are not doing this just out of charity, that there is value that we bring to the table and it's an exchange of that value, that there's a whole new market that sits in an emerging giant like Africa for companies on the other side of the Atlantic to take advantage of and engage with that next generation of entrepreneurs and create value that is both in two ways, impact and also profitable in the long run. So for us, that idea should always be central, will always be central to our engagement, that we bring some value to the table, and Impact Hub New York also brings value.
How did you get to that discussion? Was it over months or years, or did you write it down? How did you codify it?
I think we've been lucky to have a personal relationship that then translated into a business relationship.
Okay.
Most of the time, it's not that way. It's people finding that there's some shared vision, and then eventually you develop a personal relationship. So at the base of our partnership is a mutual respect between friends that then translates to members of our teams, and that makes all of this work fairly well. I would say that for me. I don't know what John Paul.
JP, how did you make this work in terms of making the partnership really excel?
Yeah, I mean, I think William nailed it. But I think as well, it's just engagement over time. Not we're going to do one program and then we do other programs with other people, whatever. It's just this over the course of time, getting to know really well what the needs are, what works, what doesn't work, and being dedicated to doing that. And the long-term dedication and commitment, I think, is also very important.
Great. Okay. Let's go to Susanna and Makeda. But Susanna, you have a zillion partners, and you showed the concentric circles. How do you make those work?
Well, on this initiative, we're at the beginning of that process. So we've sold a vision, or we've brought in partners who share a vision, right? Who all have said, yes, we want to help support this initiative. Now our job is how to leverage those relationships so that the partners and people who have signed on, right? It's not just organizations. Each of these organizations is represented by a person, right? Who says, I want to help drive this initiative forward and help keep them engaged. What we did, our process in that, we invited people into a convening where we brought groups of people together, and we had a workshop over a day and a half to explore what this issue was. So from the beginning, we asked people to contribute and weigh in, from an intellectual standpoint, not from pockets or from a long-term commitment, right? So out of that, we actually developed a shared agenda. And that is how we've approached this, is like, we can share this agenda and we can acknowledge that different partners can bring a different perspective to the table, and also to different levels of commitment. It wasn't a one-size-fits-all approach. And even in this relationship with Makeda, who signed on, right, to be an advisor, some of that is left to be defined, still to be defined. But there's a shared vision.
So it's not perfect from the start. It's a convening, you're listening, you have different levels. Makeda, do you have anything to add to, you are one relationship, but you get a lot of knowledge. Well, Nickelodeon's got lots of partners, so. Any thoughts?
One thing that I'll say that's really special about this relationship is that we're breaking down the silos. So we're creating this interdisciplinary approach to how we cultivate a community of gamers. So when you combine developers, producers, policymakers, educators, and researchers, we create a vehicle to drive meaningful change.
Great, super. A lot of complexity, but we've got some core key gems in there, how to distill it. Okay, let's talk about Marty and Scott. Interest, Techstars is great. Stanley is huge. Scott talked a little bit about the personalization, but what's the secret sauce to making it work?
I think all organizations solve for synchronization, and larger companies have a harder time for it. So that's why some people say larger companies move slow, smaller companies move fast. And we're trying to synchronize all of our company together to make sure we don't get out of the swim lanes. But I want to go back to Carlos and George's point, because I do think all of this starts with people. And I always tell people that I work with, you live in the world that's been created, or you create the world you want to live in. And we want to live in a world where we activate people to full potentiality. And we have to do that inside of our company and outside of our company. So I think as leaders, our job is to create forums for people to be successful, to bring their hope, dreams, and aspirations to be whatever they can be. So we have to be open to the outside world as a large organization, and be nimble enough to listen and listen more and let things go and form. Scott, I'll let you chime in too.
Well, I think that's perfectly said, but the key word for me, and it really encompasses what everybody's brought to the table, is reciprocity, and that's on time, commitment, values, goals, everything. And Stanley is a big company; they make us feel important. And I always joke with Marty is, we feel like the mouse working with the elephant, but the elephant makes us feel like we're part of the bigger plan. And I think that's really important. So, there's always speed differences. There's always, these paths that aren't parallel, but the fact that they're committed, they spend the time, they respect us, they listen to us. That's wildly important for a small company. And Marty and Stanley make us feel important, and we appreciate that.
I love what you said, Scott. Wildly important to make us, feel that you're important to them, and it's based on time, commitment, values, goals, sharing them. Very well stated. Carlos, you have been in businesses of all types, but you've got with Empath a new way of really unlocking potential. So can you talk about a little bit more about that? And then if you've got partners that you've worked with, because you obviously want this to be used by companies. And so how are companies responding to this? It's a very new way. AI, I don't know. It's not, that's not humanity. It's not the HR department. It's not hands-on. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the thing is that as companies have tried for a long time to identify skills and to be able to have skills by employees so they can attach that to training and attach that to future jobs, it's very difficult to do if you're going to do it manually. An annual exercise where the HR department tries to get everyone to write down their skills. People don't know what their real skills are. What are our two main partnerships? I'll talk about the first one, and we've been very fortunate, is having the right customers. Ironically, you'd think that, we'll take any customer. Well, we want customers that look at this as a positive tool, a tool to grow people, a tool to develop people, to upskill, to reskill, to ensure that people reach their potential. And we believe that everyone has skills to develop. We do not want this to be seen as a tool to find out who doesn't have the skills to be in the job that they are so they can be replaced by somebody else. So having the right customers, and we're so fortunate that our first customer was AT&T. Sure. And just a very progressive, forward-thinking company that is using this exactly to grow people. The other partnership for a startup that is absolutely critical, we just closed our seed round, which for a startup is a big deal, is having the right venture capitalists, having the right investors. If they don't buy your vision, if they don't buy your goal, your purpose, then it's going to be a constant struggle. And that is something that, again, you'd think that you'd take any venture capitalist, whoever gives you money. No, let's pick the right one who believes in what we're doing.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's very, very exciting. That's a whole nother conversation that I'm sure you and the chamber can talk about. So I want to open this up to everybody. So we're not going to have like a scrum here, but there's been a lot of key points that have been made about, why your partnerships work, really great insights. I'd love you to build on each other and just go for it. And I'll see if I can manage the conversation. Jump in.
I'd love to build on something that Marty said, which resonated well with me. The empowering part, right? Like empower your employees, also empower others to find ways to leverage your company or see reasons to engage in the community. I think there's this is something that I'm particularly passionate about, is that we can put our employees, that we can show our employees the path to also be excited about community work, and at the same time also empower the children through what we're doing. And it has proven that the more you are as a company go out and show what you're doing, the more you're empowered to actually step up and help. And that just amplifies.
I'd like to also just make a point about Amazon using its logistics. We call that smart generosity. And certainly during COVID, the companies that were the leaders, that were very employee oriented first. They then turn to their core competencies and capabilities, and they utilize that to really develop solutions. So kudos to you. Somebody else jump in on, what you've seen in this conversation you want to build on.
Hey, this is George Jones. I really want to applaud those groups that mentioned their intentionality around assisting people of color, Black people. I mean, in this time and this moment in our society, it's really important for large corporations in particular to be willing to talk explicitly about the fact that they know that these disparities oftentimes and these sort of challenges oftentimes trend really negatively for people of color, and to be intentional about their efforts and their work being targeted for those things. In a lot of ways, when Amazon turned to Bread for the City, by definition, they were doing racial equity work because virtually everybody living in poverty in Washington, D.C., and who are food insecure is a person of color. And so, but I think it's oftentimes really important for large corporations to be explicit about understanding that and being willing to say that.
George, I want to build on that because I think that's a great point. Organizations don't realize that they have unconscious bias. And it's practiced every single day and they don't even know it. Minorities never forget that they're a minority. And there is this mismatch of how people behave in an organization without really knowing what they're projecting. When the George Floyd problem, when the killing happened, you see a Black employee say, "How are you?" And they say, "Fine." What they'd actually like to say is, "I am miserable. I'd like someone to understand how I feel." So creating that type of an environment where people can be themselves and people can actually show empathy to others. So when we infer skills, we use IDs. We don't use names in order to get any biases out of the way. And it's interesting to see how minorities come to the top because they have hidden skills that even haven't been discovered.
So I'd like to build on that a little more, and also about building on what George said and about what William had said as well, which is the opportunity to think differently about engagements. So for example, with how we're trying to build partnerships between New York and Accra, in particular, there's just this mindset that has been around for a long time that there's a lot that New York or the US has to offer markets like Ghana. But what we're trying to say is that there's so much learning that we can do here based on what's happening in Accra and what innovators in Accra are doing. And how does that inform opportunities for us to also learn how to leapfrog and advance social issues here in the US? So, Black and brown communities are so often left out of access to capital, access to markets, access to opportunities that can help them build strong businesses. And so what we're saying is, well, maybe it's possible for Black and brown entrepreneurs to benefit from the tremendous growth that's occurring in sub-Saharan Africa, and we can accelerate the impact of both communities by developing programs of intentionality that raise the opportunity for people to develop and develop economically.
I also believe, Carol, that that it's really incumbent upon organizations and business to take the lead. To Carlos's point, these are big issues to solve with workforce, and their ability to really inflect change in the world is profound. Today, people trust brands more than governments, especially younger people. So if you ask somebody younger, "Hey, there's a problem in Oregon. Should we get the state government of Oregon to fix it, or should we have Nike fix this?" I will tell you who's going to win that, and it's an easy answer. So we have to really lead and step in and create this world we want to live in, because everyone is important. Everyone can add value. We have to maximize people's abilities and upside, and really it's on us. We're the adults in the room.
Marty, you're so right. The private sector doesn't get enough credit for being a step ahead of trends, and government tends to fall behind. When we pulled out of the Paris Agreement on climate change, Who filled the vacuum? Investors did. And they said, you know what? If you want us to invest in your company, show us your climate change plan. And I think the same thing is going to happen with workforce. Show us what you're doing to reskill and upskill. That becomes a responsibility of each company. And as Marty said, you can't leave it to the government to say, okay, who's going to do the upskilling and reskilling?
And Carol, if you don't mind, I just, being the person on the far side of the equator, on the other side, the question for most of emerging economies is the merit of where ideas come from and whether they are judged based on merit or the coordinates of the world that they are coming from. As we build partnerships to advance new ideas, the question is there inclusivity in engagement? There are solutions emerging in corners of the world that would never get to the center stage of global commerce and business because primarily of where they come from. And so partnerships transcending small country, just in inward-looking partnerships that are just focused on, say, the US or Europe, but partnerships that kind of go across the Atlantic and try to bring ideas from other side might be also part of the question, the issue of diversity. So it's not just about racial diversity and engagement within, say, the US, but are we going beyond and trying to be as inclusive as possible in fixing global issues?
That's fantastic. One more comment and then I'm going to wrap it.
I think I'd like to jump in and add to everybody's great comments. I think what we need to do is, again, it comes down to personal responsibility in our leadership. And if we teach young leaders and small businesses that are driving the private sector to say, well, my kids look back in 10 years and be proud of what I said and what I did. And I think if we put that in that context, right, you start promoting integrity. And I think that's a key word, right, is integrity in business. We have to make profits, right? We have to pay bills, but it's important. And every day that I work, I think about, will my wife be proud? Will my kids be proud? Will people that don't know me consider me a role model? And if we teach that right from the very beginning, we will change our future for the better.
That's fantastic to end up on there. This has been a phenomenal conversation, so thank you. Maybe we should come back again next year and do round 2 of it. I'd just like to say that technology enables. Technology by itself is not human, but what you have all done applying technology, whether it's an impact hub from around the globe, connecting people to ideas, tools, capital, knowledge, whether it's taking, a very large company, Amazon, taking its core logistics, its smart generosity, and bringing it down to the local level, somebody on the block that needs food in Washington. I love the fact of the comment, they make us feel important. Listening is really core to partnerships, reciprocity of time, commitment, values, and goals, developing a shared agenda, creating forums for sharing the information and not being perfect, guys. You're evolving over time. I love what Carlos is doing with Empath and getting rid of unconscious bias so that the true potential of people can rise to the challenge. Because I think you all have one common theme. It's about taking what you do and, adding your, I always call it miracle grow, so that the potential, whomever your recipients are, is going to blossom. So inclusivity, integrity, ideas can come from anywhere. Finding the right investors for your seed capital, and business needs to take the lead. So I want to thank TCS and the Chamber. This has been an amazing group. You have tremendous knowledge. Keep going, share it via blogs. If you want to come on my podcast, let me know. I want to share more because each one of you could have an hour conversation. Thank you so much.
Carol, you did a fabulous job at teasing out the details and asking the tough questions. So thank you, Carlos, Scott, Marty, John Paul, William, Susanna, Makeda, Bettina, and George. The ripple effect of your work is clearly systemic. So I'm really glad to have you here. And as Mark mentioned at the top of the hour, we are now joined by Dr. Tomas Chamorro-Premuzic to continue this conversation. So Tomas, given everything that we've heard in this session and your expertise on data, leadership, kind of the future of work, can you share a few closing remarks on kind of the role that more employers have in creating social impact and how tech is integrated?
Well, I think there has been certainly a lot of food for thought in what has been, I think, a very rich discussion. Sometimes when we look at all these details and these technological advances and innovations, it is easy to forget that the big picture is actually pretty clear and has most of us really singing from the same hymn sheet, where our position really is that there is absolutely no question that in the next 10, 20, or 30 years, any innovation, social progress, or otherwise will come if we can successfully enable the interface between human and technology to be unleashed. In any area of technology today, it is AI working with humans that produce a better combination or result than one without the other. And in any area of human potential or human performance, you need humans being supported or aided by technology. So, I think fundamentally the challenge, certainly to us at Manpower Group, is to prepare the critical enablers, human enablers, so that we can leverage the technologies that are available now and truly make the world a better place and drive progress. So technology is very different today than it was even 10 years ago. But at the end of the day, you need humans to develop and nurture their curiosity, their humility, their eagerness to learn, and their empathy to put this technology to the best possible use. So, lots of interesting remarks. And I think, the sky is the limit if we can manage the human tech interface as we indeed are trying to do.
Great. That's awesome. Any kind of closing thoughts that you have around leadership? I know that you're an expert in this space as well.
So leadership is so interesting because even though maybe 15 or 20 years ago, the discussion was around AI or tech automating leadership and replacing humans, even vis-a-vis tasks that are focused on strategy and innovation. If we learned one lesson over the past couple of decades, is that technology and the digital and AI revolutions have actually augmented the importance of the human and humane aspects of leadership. In a world where everyone is virtual, where we are mostly in physical isolations, and where we need to rely on technology for every single interaction, this can only work. You can only unlock human potential if you have leaders who are able to display empathy, humility, curiosity, and truly connect with others, even in these artificial and virtual environments. And there's no question that humans are not going to be able to compete with machines when it comes to the algorithmic or, objective problem-solving capabilities that machines already have. But machines aren't going to be able to substitute for human empathy, caring, EQ, curiosity, and consideration. So it's a great opportunity. A lot of the discussion before focused on partnership as well. We need to learn how to partner with AI and technology to enhance ourselves and improve the world.
That's a great kind of closing statement for this conference. It's not just about the tech, it's also about the people and how we can integrate and leverage to really scale impact and continue to drive further innovation. So I want to thank you, especially for being here. Do you have any sort of closing thoughts, inspirational words you'd like to share with the audience before we transition to our last series of working sessions?
Just to remember, I know we have a lot of leaders in the audience watching us from different places. Just to remember, never forget, it is always about the people. humans are the most adaptable species on Earth. And we've managed to invent and create all these technologies that enable us to even keep going and remain productive and engaged and performing in the hardest of circumstances. We need to keep fostering and nurturing human potential so that the next crisis, and there's always going to be one, is managed in the best possible way.
Great. Thank you so much. And that looks to be a wrap on the 3rd annual Digital Empower Summit. So thank you to everyone who's tuned in over the past 2 days, to TCS for supporting this program, and welcome to our 3rd, well, I guess we've got three breakouts. We welcome you to join. First is Open Source Citizen Science for Good, Reimagining Community Health Systems, how cross-corporate engagement can address challenges in a post-COVID-19 world. And then lastly, Technology for Good, Activate Your Purpose with Measurable Impact. Thank you all.